This one thing could literally replace our entire medical system. Now, I'm not talking about emergency care, things like that. I'm mainly talking about chronic disease. I really looked at this topic from many different angles, just posing this question: what is the most powerful thing you can do for your health? Everyone can afford it. It will produce the most weight loss of anything that you do. It will fix a stubborn metabolism, and that's called the set point. So you might lose, let's say 20 pounds, but then your body will not let you lose more than that. This particular thing will address that and fix that. This natural therapy has the ability to fix your brain, repair brain tissue. It actually helps regrow your brain cells. It increases your mood, your cognitive function. The effects of this therapy on your mitochondria are very similar to exercise. Can you guess what it is? If you guess fasting, you are correct. If you did fasting, your medical expenses will go way, way down. You're not starving your body. You are just controlling when you eat and when you're not eating. When I was first introduced to fasting, I really did not think anything about it. I thought it was like, what's that going to do? It's not changing the calories that you're eating, until I started looking at it, especially from our history of how humans have developed, because the root problem of over 80% of all diseases is insulin resistance. So all you really need to know at this point is that too much insulin creates a lot of problems for your body. So fasting fixes that problem. So you have genes right now in your body to fix almost everything, okay? But the question is, how do you turn on those genes to fix things? Well, there's certain triggers. Things that you can control: lifestyle, food, not eating. It's the absence of eating that triggers a lot of these survival genes. So in this process of not eating, your body converts over into burning fat and ketones. So there's going to be a point where your body is now adapted to burning ketones, and that takes sometimes like 3 days. Now, another question I get a lot is, how should someone fast if they're a woman versus a man? And there's a really good book I recommend. I'll put the link down below. It's entitled Fast Like a Girl. Now, because a woman goes through this whole monthly cycle, you have to adjust the fasting schedule a little bit. So in Dr. Mindy's book, to keep this really simple, as soon as you have your period and the hormones are starting to build up, between day 1 and day 10 is when you want to do some hardcore fasting, because you have enough hormones to be able to afford to do fasting. And this is the time you want to do fasting, especially to lose weight. But as we get to day 20, okay, so now we're on day 20, all the way to the end of the month, that's when you don't want to fast. There's already too much stress on the body. You don't want to add fasting to alter those hormones. But then as soon as you have your period, the next 10 days, you're right back on track. That doesn't mean I recommend snacking, maybe just 3 meals. I think that would be sufficient. So that's a real rough summary of her book. You can get a lot more details if you want to get it. I'll put the link down below. If we're dealing with hormones, these hormones are made out of cholesterol. Then that cholesterol is then turned into these steroid hormones. Out of all the hormones, progesterone is probably one of the most potent protectors of the brain. When progesterone goes too low, your brain is at risk. So the whole point on that is just to make sure you have enough of the raw material. And the raw material I'm talking about is cholesterol. There is a lot of cholesterol in egg yolks, in shellfish like shrimp. Liver has cholesterol. Fatty cheese has cholesterol. You also want to make sure that you really deal with this stress level, because if the stress is really high during menopause, what will happen is your adrenals will start stealing some of the raw material and take them away from progesterone and other hormones. So doing things to reduce stress is super, super important. There's actually 2 cofactors that are really important that a lot of people are missing, and that would be magnesium and zinc. What you need to know about magnesium is, number 1, most people are deficient. Number 2, it's almost impossible to test for it. You can't test for it in the blood because most of it is inside the cell. You have to do a very sophisticated test to measure it, and most, if not all, doctors do not test for magnesium. The one you want is magnesium glycinate before bed, and you want at least 400 milligrams. Now, as far as zinc goes, you need about 50 milligrams of zinc. But if you had shellfish, you can easily get your zinc, especially oysters. Now, a couple rules about fasting. The rule of thumb is don't eat if you're not hungry. Ride the wave, go a little longer. Because if you were able to go 36 to even 72 hours of fasting, you literally are going to generate immune stem cells. That's huge. So number 1, let your body tell you how long to fast. If you do fasting and you feel like crap, You need to eat. I would say everyone could do this intermittent fasting, but when we get into more prolonged fasting, allow your body to tell you if it's working. And also, it really depends on what you're trying to solve. If you're trying to lose weight, of course, you want to fast a lot longer. Now, there's also this topic that you may have heard: when you do low carb, your cortisol is going to increase. There is no hardcore evidence that shows that cortisol is going to increase when you do fasting or on a low carb diet, because that study was done on rats. Okay. And yeah, okay. So if something works on rats, it may work on humans, but that is in the area of opinion. It's not based on facts. I have over 8,000 success stories on my website from people doing this, getting off medication, to losing a ton of weight, to sleeping better, to getting rid of inflammation. So how do you explain all that? Also, I've talked to a lot of people who have done low carb and intermittent fasting for many years. I don't know of anyone who told me all of a sudden they started getting stressed out or they're having stress problems at all. Also, when you do fasting, you're making your cells more sensitive to insulin, and that alone is going to offset the raising of cortisol, because insulin now is working. It's more efficient. So there's two types of fasting I want to talk about. You have water fasting, so you're not eating food. Then you have something called a dry fast, where you're not eating any food and you're not drinking any water. Now, I looked into the dehydration genes. So when you dehydrate yourself, okay, to a certain degree, you have a series of genes that kick in or are expressed. And I started looking at those genes, and a lot of the functions have to do with hydration and keeping your body hydrated and not letting too much fluid go out. But one is enhanced weight loss. This might be hard to believe, but your fat can be converted to water. If you take 1 pound of fat and you burn it with oxygen, it'll turn into a little bit more than 1 pound of water. So it's not that fat is saturated with water. When you burn that fat, it turns into water. And this is really bizarre. Look it up. It's totally true. The point is, we're not trying to dehydrate you. We're just trying to control when you feed the body water. There's more antioxidants to develop in the brain. You get enhanced autophagy, so you get a deeper cleaning of the cells. You get more detoxification from the liver. As far as what I'm doing presently, okay, and I will switch it up occasionally, but I used to fast from dinner all the way and just skip breakfast and have the first meal, let's say a late lunch at 2, maybe 3, and then also have a dinner. Now what I'm doing is I'm actually consuming a breakfast in the morning. Sometimes it's at 9:30, sometimes it's at 10, sometimes 11. And then I'll also have a lunch at 1. Sometimes my second meal is at 2. But what I've done is I'm feeding my body more when I need more energy, which is in the first part of the day, versus later at night. I don't need all that energy. I don't want to go to bed with a big meal on my stomach. Now, if you do fasting and you notice your hair is falling out or you're losing your cycle, then you need to look at what you're eating more closely. Chances are you're not getting enough protein. And I'm talking about the highest quality protein that you can get, and that would be grass-fed red meat. I would start to beef up that, no pun intended, to the point where your body can get those amino acids. And plus, with the red meat comes all the B vitamins, the trace minerals, everything you need for hair growth. If you're not getting enough sea salt when you're doing fasting, you're not going to be able to sleep as well. So don't forget about that. Most people need about a level teaspoon of sea salt every single day. Sleep is really, really important too. If you don't feel like you're getting enough sleep, you're going to be hungrier. And for some people that just can't sleep when they're doing fasting, at that point, I do recommend taking melatonin. Maybe you work up to 5 milligrams and then eventually up to 10 milligrams, and you take that before bed. All right, so now that you know a little bit more about fasting, if you want to know what to eat, you should watch this video right here. Check it out.